I move to appropriate the sum of $1,432,292 to fund the police department salaries. Excuse me 1 minute. Please let me start over again. I recited the incorrect number. I move to appropriate the sum of $1,544,409 to fund the police department salaries, line 24, and $112,117 to fund police department expenses, line 25.
You've heard the motion, which is different from what is printed in the warrant. Police department salary is $1,544,409, and expenses is $112,117. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation? Mrs. Vaca.
Yes, the Finance recommends.
Does the Board of Selectmen wish to make a recommendation? Mr. Washburn.
The Board of Selectmen recommends.
Is there any further discussion? Mr. Sylvia.
Excuse me. How many new positions does this entail?
2.
You have to go to the bathroom? No.
2 new police officers.
2 new ones.
Yes,
That's completely new, not replacing anybody.
that is correct. This is increasing the amount of the number of people on the police force by 2 uniformed personnel.
Does this replace a vacancy created by the promotion of a sergeant to a lieutenant?
Yes, it does.
Doesn't sound too sure down there.
Well, I was trying to interpret your question.
Oh,
The way the department is staffed right now, we have 2 lieutenants, a chief, 5 sergeants, and the rest are patrolmen. The promotion of 1 sergeant to lieutenant left a vacancy in a patrolman's position that would be filled by one of these positions. Then we would add another one.
in which you would fill also a sergeant position, I presume.
Yes,
the one
and
that's
people
been
would move.
vacated.
People would move up to do that.
Now,
Yes.
how does that compare with some of our surrounding towns? It seems to me that we're top-heavy.
With a chief and 2 lieutenants?
And 5 or 6 sergeants, however that many's going to be.
No, we have 5 sergeants, or we're organized for 5 sergeants. That is not top-heavy at all.
No?
No, in fact, that's we're slow to go to a 2-lieutenant structure, as has been done by a number of towns of North Reading's size that we normally use as comparables. But we are also in the range of 4 to 6 police officers behind in the total number of personnel in the department compared to those towns that we normally compare ourselves to.
Could you give me a couple of those towns?
Yes, we compare to Bedford, which is almost exactly the same population that we have. We will compare ourselves to, I'm trying to think of another one that's close to the same size as we are.
Did you have any, like Linfield, for example? What's their table of organization?
Well, Linfield is organized differently than North Reading is because they have a public safety
I know that.
director there who is also the chief of police.
Yeah.
Specifically, I don't know what their organization is.
They have one captain. It doesn't matter what you call the highest officer under the chief, whether you call him lieutenant or captain or whatever.
Yes.
They have one captain, and I don't know, maybe 4 sergeants? I don't know if they have that many.
Well, let me explain how we use our personnel, and maybe that will clarify my answer. I don't think that it's fair I don't think that it's necessarily accurate to match North Reading's organizational layout up against another communities because of the different things that go on in different communities. The two lieutenants in the police department are the command officers for the daytime shift in one's case and the nighttime activities of the department. They split the load in that fashion. Then they also split the administrative duties within the department that are allocated to the lieutenants, primarily training and some of the budget development work. The sergeants are our first line supervisors. They're the people that, if you looked at a fire department in comparison, our fire department has four captains who are the shift commanders for each of the four shifts. Our sergeants in the police department are likewise the shift commanders and the direct supervisors of the patrolmen. The fifth sergeant has historically, in North Reading's case, been the department prosecutor and sergeant of detectives, and we will vary our size of the detective force anywhere between 1 and 3 people, depending on the workload that is at hand from time to time.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. On the motion, which since it's not as printed in the warrant, I will read the figures again. $1,544,409 to fund police department salaries and $112,117 to fund police department expenses. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Unanimous. Mr. Washburn?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the following person be admitted to the meeting: William Halligan.
We have a motion to admit Mr. William Halligan to the meeting. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Unanimous. Mr. Halligan is the building inspector. Okay, line items 26 and 27, Mr. Daly.
Mr. Moderator, I move to appropriate the sum of $1,174,588. That's $1,174,588 to fund fire department salaries, line 26, and $132,621 to fund fire department expenses, line 27.
You've heard the motion. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation? Mrs. Vaca?
The Finance recommends.
Does the Board of Selectmen wish to make a recommendation? Mr. Washburn?
The Board of Selectmen recommends.
Is there any discussion? Mr. Daly?
Mr. Moderator, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to point out that the reason that the fire department salaries appropriation is different from what's printed in the warrant is that the number had to be adjusted according to the recently settled collective bargaining agreement, the first 2 years of which were funded on the first night of the town meeting. This would fund the second 2 years of that contract. I'm sorry, the third year of that contract. The fourth year would be funded next year. This does not represent any change in the number of personnel in the fire department.
Any further discussion?
Transfers.
Mr. Daly, the town clerk asks about transfers, and there are no transfers specified in the motion that you gave me. Mr. Daly.
There are none. There are none
In the
specified.
warrant, it is specified to transfer $68,645 from ambulance revenue to line item 26 and $18,500 from the same source to line item 27. We're not going to do that, is that correct?
We are going to do that.
Okay, then it should be reflected in the motion. Would you please correct your motion? Okay, any further discussion on the motion before us? And the amounts, once again, since they are different than as printed in the warrant, it is $1,174,588 to fund the fire department salaries and $132,621 to fund the fire department expenses. On the motion, all those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed? Unanimous. Mr. Daly.
Mr. Moderator, I move to appropriate the sum of $4,200 to fund the emergency management budget as specified on lines 28 and 29 as printed in the sponsor recommends column of the warrant.
You've heard the motion. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation, Mrs. Vaca?
Finance recommends.
Does the Board of Selectmen wish to make a recommendation, Mr. Washburn?
The Board of Selectmen recommends.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed? Unanimous. Mr. Daly.
Mr. Moderator, I move to appropriate the sum of $120,052 to fund the code enforcement budget as specified on lines 30 and 31 as printed in the sponsor recommends column of the warrant.
You've heard the motion. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation, Mrs. Vaca?
Finance recommends.
Does the Board of Selectmen have a recommendation, Mr. Washburn?
The Board of Selectmen recommends.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed? Unanimous. Mr. Daly? Oh, we're done, aren't we? No? Oh, yes, health. Thank you very much. Mr. Daly?
Mr. Moderator, I move to appropriate the sum of $147,121 to fund the health budget as specified on lines 32 and 33 as printed in the sponsor recommends column of the warrant along with the accompanying transfers.
You've heard the motion. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation, Mrs. Vaca?
Finance recommends.
Does the Board of Selectmen wish to make a recommendation, Mr. Washburn?
The Board of Selectmen recommends.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed? Unanimous. Now we're done with this particular section of the omnibus article. Debt service.